Okay, we're on. All right. I am having a conversation with violinist Blanka Bednarz and pianist Matthew Bengtson. I just mispronounced it, didn't I? Bengtson. Benton. Oh, come on, help me out, Matthew.
Bengtson.
Benson. Okay, sorry, I'm going to go on it, son. It's very tricky, as you see. Sorry, I apologize, but names can be kind of tricky. We're discussing the duo's 2017 Musica Omnia 3 CD. Hello, count them three. Everybody who wants to look into Szymanowski's work, 3D CD set of Karol Szymanowski's Masterworks for violin and piano solo. And I love the way you split this 3 CD set up. It won the Global Music Awards Silver Medal. Yes? Yeah? It is a magnificent achievement, just the binding and I mean, just the packaging alone. The program note booklet is really, really informative, and this is a very, very good thing because as it turns out, jump all over me when at will, but as it turns out, Karol Szymanowski, I mentioned earlier, he came into my life, his orchestral music, his symphonies, the four symphonies, and as a conductor, his music started to be performed, the big orchestral stuff, but I was not so aware of the chamber music. But this man is a very complex composer, I now realize, and human being. Let me do the intros, and then I'm going to try and shut up and throw out a question and get this thing started. We're looking at by the way, some transcriptions, just a wide variety of the composer's music over basically his lifetime. The early period, which is kind of more or less Germanic, romantic, this kind of middle period, beautiful, beautiful French influenced, if I may say so, impressionistic period, and then his kind of connection with Polish folk tunes. And you have mentioned already that Blanka, that it was always there in his music. Anyway, violinist, Blanka Bednarz, alumna of your turn.
Kaliszewska School of Sound in Poland. And
Thank you very much. In Poznan, I can pronounce that anyway. Master's and DMA from the New England Conservatory. Studied with Jim Dunham. I went to Cal Arts with Jim Dunham, violist. Hello. This is Jim Dunham, the violist, yeah?
yes, I was
Yeah.
very lucky to study piano.
We went to Cal Arts together when we were both youngin, and you've been a concerto soloist and chamber music collaborator all over the world. And you're on the faculty at Dickinson College in Pennsylvania at the moment. Pianist Matthew Bengtson. How'd I do? Close, never mind. Pianist, composer, a leading interpreter of music of Scriabin, and that's a very interesting connection, the Scriabin-Szymanowski connection that we probably won't get into in this conversation. Masters, DMA, Peabody Conservatory. You're obviously a Szymanowski scholar, as per the notes and everything else. I mean, this package is something that professional musicians who are looking at this period and this composer in particular, but the period really of Europe, Eastern Europe, in these times of 1880s through the 1930s, just before the Second World War. Really, it's a magnificent. And also, we're about to mention Karol Szymanowski, probably the greatest Polish composer of the 20th century. Can we agree? Yes? Nod your head.
Oh, yes.
Without doubt. And
Absolutely.
I think that's what caught me when I first started hearing his music. It's like the structure, all of that is so complex. But so now let's talk about it. Karol Szymanowski, born of Polish nobility, very interesting, highly cultured. Reminds me of Marcel Proust in France. Highly cultured environment. His father played piano and cello. I mean, oh, how lucky, how lucky. Was very interested in the modernist music in the late 19th century. And he had a disability, a disability in one of his legs apparently. So he was able, I believe, based on that disability and other things, to basically check out of certain things. For example, World War One. He simply, right? Am I right here? He simply just stayed away from it. Yeah. And compose. Talk about that. It's your turn. Give me some info, Matthew. Give me a little overview, or Blanka, of Karol Szymanowski. And while we're at it, we can get to my first question, which is what, how, when did that magic happen? Where both of you said, "Who is this guy? I like this." Go. Who wants to go first? How about Blanka?
I fell in love with Szymanowski's music as a kid, really in Poland, listening weekly to various concerts and, of course, records. I believe the first recording that I heard of Szymanowski's was by a rather known Polish violinist Kaja Danczowska, a very well-known and appreciated interpreter of Szymanowski's music. And I have to say that I shared the experience of Sergei Prokofiev when Prokofiev heard, for instance, the first movement of the Myths. Myths were enough, really, for me to contract the disease. And then over the years, I began to study more and more of the pieces. Second Violin Concerto, the Myths, the Nocturne and Tarantella. Throughout the years ever since, upon meeting Matthew in 2003, I believe, through a mutual friend, we together really covered 90% of the works involving violin and piano of Szymanowski's. We didn't do transcriptions of Paganini caprices, for example, but really the rest we have, and we both devoted large periods of our lives to very close study of his works. I also have been, as a violinist, lucky to have performed in at least 2 symphonies and in the song cycles, Infatuated Muezzin and another, and in Stabat Mater. So really, I've tried to play as much of his music as possibly possible.
Well, right?
Say again, Matthew?
Symphonies as well, too.
Symphonies too, indeed. The second and the fourth.
Okay, Matthew, your turn. What happened? When did Szymanowski come into your life?
Well, mine was much more haphazard. I was just kind of browsing around in the library looking for some interesting things, and I was into Richter at this time. And Richter was one of Szymanowski's great promoters. I think you could put Warszawski in that column as well. Rubinstein, of course, kind of the great Szymanowski Polish pianist.
Can I just interrupt for a moment? Oh, good. Okay, good. Thanks, Blanka. We'll just let Blanka get settled, and she needed to turn on a light. Okay, excuse me. Let's start. Let's go and back up just a little bit, Matthew, if you don't mind, where you
Sure.
first encountered Szymanowski.
So Richter was just voracious with his repertoire interests. His repertoire was so much larger than what just about anybody offers nowadays. And I was just browsing his music because it was just fascinating what his tastes were. And there was one CD, oh geez, I don't remember, it might have had Hindemith and Prokofiev and Webern and Szymanowski, and I thought, what the heck, I'll pick this up. And he was playing only 2 because he was like that. He just decided he didn't like the third one, so he played only 2 out of 3 of the melodies. And I thought this was just fascinating. And I was in the library, they had a score, I picked it up, and it did remind me a bit of Scriabin in a way, which I was very into at that time and have been for a long time. And I thought, well, this is great. I'm looking for something that not everybody else plays. I guess I'll try these pieces. And I did, and they seemed to suit me very well. And I browsed around, and I found more and more Szymanowski, and there was a ton of solo piano music that very rarely played. And there were these wonderful violin pieces and songs and orchestral music, and basically all of it was great. And it just seemed like this treasure.
And then Blanka walked into your life. Have I got that anywhere close? I mean, talk about serendipities. Yeah?
A mutual friend of ours from Boston introduced us to each other, knowing that I was headed for Pennsylvania, and at the time Matthew resided in Philadelphia. So immediately we got in touch, and our first recital together was very soon after, and we went on a tour with this music to Kansas. We performed at several universities there, and to Cornell University. We've tried to introduce as many people to Szymanowski as possible. Just last year, we were able to perform together at the Villa Atma Museum, which was a dream of Matthew's to be where Szymanowski resided, and for me to return to Atma as well. We also performed Szymanowski with other violinists, with other pianists, to spread the joy around.
Matthew, you were going to say.
I was just going to say, for those who don't know, Atma is the Karol Szymanowski Museum in Zakopane.
I'm glad you pronounced it, and I didn't have to.
Which is was exposed to the local folk idioms that were the foundation of his later music.
Yeah. And I've got a quote here from the booklet, and it's so perfect, especially later today. I've had a chance now to listen to the CDs three times, which is kind of rare for me because we've had some cancellations and some rebookings of interviews. Everybody knows that this happens. But this just really hit the nail on the head, so to say. Quote, "The range of his style, the quality of this craftsmanship, and the breadth of his imagination are all on display in these selections, and boy, is that for sure." It's like when you hear something and as a musician, and I'm sure amateurs must, or just listeners, must hear something when there's such good order, such craftsmanship, and such virtuosity. By the way, Matthew, can I just ask how, he was a virtuoso pianist, how tough are the piano works? There's some mention of it, they're being pretty tough.
They're pretty hard in varying degrees. The thing with Szymanowski is the that's a big subject. It's hard to talk about it in a short time. It is a little bit time consuming to learn. There are a lot of notes. There are a lot of accidentals to be read. But I will say that once you get used to it, if you have kind of the hang of it, it sticks with you very well. Once you've got these pieces, they're really your friends, and you get to know them better as you continue to play them. But I know there's some other composers whose music, may be, however difficult it is to learn the first time, but you go back after a couple years and you feel like you're on square one, and that's not true with Szymanowski. I find.
Blanka, is Karol Szymanowski your friend as a violinist in terms of his compositional style?
And here it's worth to mention one of the subjects that drew me also into closer research, and that's the relationship of Szymanowski with Paul Kochanski, violinist. Who had huge influence on Szymanowski, who, as we know, was not a violinist. So Kochanski really did introduce a lot of things, conceptual things, idiomatic items to Szymanowski. It's music that's also not easy violinistically, but ever interesting, intriguing, and opening up avenues of imagination and color, which I really appreciate. I love that.
Do you have any idea how these, because we mentioned that the violinist really was his assistant in writing so much fiddle music. I mean, they were very, very much collaborators, which is fabulous for a composer to have a violinist to say, "Does this work?" No, but is there any indication in the scholarly information about whether some of the colors, some of those wonderful colors and harmonics, whether somebody said, "Why don't you try this," or whether Karol said, I want this color?
We do know that Kochanski introduced, for instance, double glissando on double stops, but moving downwards with a tremolo glissando. That was a new thing at that time. And also he was known for being able to perform very tricky double stops, and Szymanowski took that up with no problem. The same sort of finger twisters that he was putting in his piano music found in violin music through Kochanski too. High register and the very soft dynamics. Kochanski was known for having a huge palette of color within soft dynamics. So it's the kind of intimacy of Kochanski's style that seems to have fitted very well with the nobility and this great sensitivity of Szymanowski that he in turn is also so known for as natural to him.
And you do, as I've said earlier, you cover a really wide and interesting spectrum of his music on these 3 CDs. I'm thinking, why don't we dance a little bit with some of the music? I'm just thinking, Matthew, let's look at the mazurkas, for example. An entire CD, the 24 mazurkas, and then the additional 2. At this point, what's the year? Let me run down to these.
1925-26.
1925-26. So the war. The First World War is over. He's, stayed away from that one and just created and wrote and composed. And you're saying 1926. Was he? I can't remember where he was. Do you remember where?
Well, he was in Zakopanę at this time, and the timing is really significant because, just the basic history is there was no Poland basically until after World War I, and Szymanowski when he grew up, he was a cosmopolitan. He was always looking to the outside for his inspirations, and there was this tremendous wave of nationalism, and so I think it helped him to look at home and see what was there, and he found something that was incredibly compelling. It seemed an odd mix between this, almost effete, very, cultured, very refined man, and then these earthy, macho guys making this, body kind of folk music. But he contributed that sensitive ear for his harmonic palette, and the combination of that and the earthiness is it's fantastic. It's delicious.
Yeah, very, very interesting harmonic stuff going on in those mazurkas. I have a speech impediment. I'm not able to pronounce mazurkas properly tonight for some reason. But just to point out a couple, for example, the 12th mazurka. I'm sure you're in tons of other music, but it's interesting from the beginning. It sets there are these wonderful narratives, and then we'll talk about myths. Talk about narratives for violin and piano. My God, I have never heard such complex pieces. Anyway, back to the mazurkas for a bit. And also the rhythmic and meter stutters, if you will, which is very characteristic, I suppose, of the folk tunes and folk meters. But I couldn't help but think, oh boy, am I going to be in trouble? But just a tiny bit, okay, just a little tiny bit of Freud, a little bit about the handicap somehow. If he had a limp, it's described as I'm sure it never entered his mind, but somehow that I had the feeling that in those mazurkas in that period of time, rediscovering his home, you're eager to tell me something, that he really felt comfortable. Maybe help me out, Matthew.
I don't have a psychoanalytical take on it.
He got out of that one easily. Now I'm just hanging.
Since you mentioned the 12th mazurka, I think that is a unique. I've looked at the history of mazurkas from the beginning to more recent ones, and there is no other mazurka that's like that. It's really a piece on an epic scale. It's very rough. It's very aggressive. It's like there's a whole battle scene going on, and at the end there's this sense of enormous amount of time that had passed.
That's just that one. I'm looking at. I have asterisks after 3 or 4. We're just talking this set of mazurkas on CD number 3. Hang in there. We're going to be going back in time in a minute. But just incredible stuff. Number 12 mazurka. Interesting from the beginning. It sets this narrative. Anyway, and hard to put together these mazurkas. What?
Well, there's a particular. I don't know how to describe it. From a technical point of view, they are the least demanding of Szymanowski's solo piano pieces. So if you want an entry point, that would be it.
You have to have a certain understanding of how to play this man's music. I think you've intimated that earlier. There's something, but once you get the hang of it.
Yeah, once you get the hang of it, then it flows. But I think it's important to listen to the folk music. It's important to listen to good performances, which are hopefully that's part of our contribution to that process. But it's like a lot of music that is based on vernacular. It could be music that's based on jazz. It could be music that's based on Hungarian gypsy music or something. But there's a freedom about it. You can't play it literally. It has to get beyond that.
So now, Blanka, it's your turn, because I have never heard myths before, and my brain just blew fuses. Do you have to, once you get it, it works? Is it the same kind of story with him, and especially on these pieces, or what? Tell me.
Let me start by saying that I like to approach this as though we couldn't have the sound. Yes, so to speak of the myths a little bit as though one couldn't hear them, had no access to recording of it. The very opening, the two distant keys being put together on the piano, yet in a way that speaks, that brings image of water immediately to one, and then immediately this high spun spider-like line in the violin appears, and all of a sudden one is in a different world. I think that's what's captivated Prokofiev. That's certainly what captivated me, and it only gets better from there. The first myth is based on myth of Aeschylus and a nymph. He pursued her. She didn't want his advances, so she wanted to be turned into a source. That's the title, Arethusa's source. But he also was turned into a body of water to be with her eternally. All of that can be heard so vividly in this music. And it's not about the program, really. It's not that this moment represents exactly the turning into a source and so on. But there's a tremendous feeling for the atmosphere that is so beautifully done, and in very novel ways done by Szymanowski, with the two instruments speaking to each other with his demanding of the violin almost pianistic colors, with his demanding of the piano almost violinistic colors. So if one couldn't hear more of Szymanowski's than just this one movement, there would be a wonderful introduction to the violin world of Szymanowski, just as Matthew
So are these pieces performed very often? The three myths. I'm looking. I mean, the second one. My notes are this is just a huge, epic tone poem.
Yes,
it's just gigantic. So, but are these three played very much? I know not much, but still.
In Poland, they are standard repertoire of every violinist, and they're becoming, of course, more known. If in the United States one would encounter violin teachers giving one of the Szymanowski's pieces, myths would be most likely the choice. The second one being perhaps Nocturne and Tarantella. We certainly hope to make them as much household names pieces in repertoire of every violinist as possible.
We've been able to touch a little bit. Let me see. Oh, we still have a little bit of time here. We've touched a little bit, danced around a few things, which always makes me kind of want to ask the question about how did you two live in separate parts of the world most of the time? Correct?
Not so much. I mean, I was in Philadelphia and Blanka was in Carlisle. It was 2 hours.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's doable. That's okay. I had visions of Poland and Boston or something. But I guess my point is, what was the process of elimination? How did you decide, the two of you? Collaboration's tricky, can be trouble. But how were the compromises worked out about the programming for here? And are there any scars?
Programming is I will say what I really appreciate a lot. I like chamber programs in which the instrumentation is varied. And Blanka has a great interest in the solo music as well. And I think it's great to have programs that offer both the duo and the solo because they give different sides of the composer. And I mean, I'm very happy Blanka's given me many opportunities to play a large chunk of my Szymanowski repertoire in these concerts. And we've played so many of these concerts, and I don't know how many different programs there have been. We've mixed and matched all kinds of different ways, haven't we?
Yes. It's a great joy for me to hear the piano solo works interspersed with the duo works. The one world informs the other constantly. So thank you.
Well, and also a 3 CD set, it can be a bit daunting, just looking at it, and
all at once.
and because of the nature of the composer and his 3 distinct periods that are discussed in great detail, that makes things diverse. But also the idea that you have this collaborative CD that also allows solo piano music, fiddle piano music, so on. It's a really an entrancing CD, set, I should say, and I've played it at a little dinner gathering a couple 3 nights ago, especially the number 3, the 20 mazurkas, that CD, just to see how people and everybody, it's just a party setting, but I'm kind of curious because it's not easy, but somehow it seemed to have been assimilated by my guests.
That's been my happy observation, is that people come in, and I don't know if it's a self-selected group that they're open to something we don't know, but they almost all the time, the audiences, they just think this is wonderful music. And we talked a little bit about how the different style periods, his style changes, but there's always a romantic soul underneath him. There's this harmonic sensitivity, there's a sense of virtuosity, exploration.
And high intellect. This guy came from a very, when the mind's really working, it's so sophisticated, you can just feel that. Blanka, did you have anything to say? I'm going to try to go at all just now. No? Sorry, could you move a little closer to
the microphone? Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you better. Thank you.
I just wanted to touch also on the construction of the first and second CD, which is perhaps more like concert program, each one. So in terms of balance and contrast, we didn't necessarily aim to make the CDs into first period, one CD, second period, another third period.
Although it is pretty much chronological, isn't it? The 3 CDs. The music is in pretty much chronological compositional order, isn't it?
So.
Excuse me. Sorry. Go ahead.
But I just wanted to emphasize again that there's such richness in each one of these periods that it's a pure joy to move between them freely, and gather animus from one to another.
A beautiful word. I love that word, animus, and also just to hear the skill of this composer. And again, I'm thinking of the, if you will, French, the impressionistic influenced music. So beautiful. The violin sonata we haven't even had really time to talk about, from 1904, from the very beginning. And that's what I kind of found interesting about what I think I can say is kind of a chronological compositional order. And it is very important because you can really hear this transformation of his thought, you know, and the influences around his life in certain times of his growing years, if you will, and then this settling in with these mazurkas and so on. It's really fascinating. What's up? Are you going to do? Is anything else in the works, or are you just going, okay, he's done. Who's next? Is there more Szymanowski possibly in the works after you've paid the bills on this one? I mean, you know, 3 CD set. I hope you got plenty of grants or something, because that was a beautiful piece of packaging. Go, Matthew.
That's Musica Omnia. They have done a great job with their production, for sure.
But what do you think? You guys?
There's more solo piano music out there. I wouldn't say that I'm aiming to record everything, but there could be some more out there. There's some sonatas and some etudes that are top drawer. I think that would be worth tackling.
That are probably not well known, but the catch is you, the artist, have to make the sacrifice, learning music that you may never be asked to perform again. I mean,
just keep offering it. That's all.
What about the fiddle repertoire? This CD set doesn't cover all of it, does it?
Certainly not the 220. and there are the Paganini caprices with piano accompaniment. But other than that, we pretty much covered all of the violins. So if we're fortunate enough to be able to record one of the concerti above, will be fantastic. And I did want to say a thank you to Dickinson College, which was partially responsible for being able to put the project together, and of course providing the hall and the piano for us to record. So it's been many people contributed to.
And these pieces were, just remembering, were recorded a few years back, if I remember correctly. Correct? And now they've been kind of, you rebundled them together and put them out in this beautiful set. Have I got that correct? And that's exactly my point. I don't mean to editorialize, but it's like, it doesn't matter when pieces were recorded. It's what there is there. Is it good? Is it bad? Is there substance? You know, so there's certainly substance here. It's a beautiful, beautiful set, as I've said, probably ad nauseum. I think I may have covered just about everything. Let me drift down here, and then we'll ask if there are any more last goodies. What do you think? Are we done? Shall I do a summation? Matthew is so easy. He's like, yeah, okay. Okay, let's do a little review. So what's going to go up at performingartsreview.net is, as you guys know and others know now, the first thing that I'll put together will be getting our video interview up, and then I'm going to put up pictures and video connections and links and everything else I can do to make that page as interesting as possible, because people visit that site a lot these days. I mean, 1,500 or so, that's pretty good. And I have a thing that tells me whether they're bots or not. very few bots, 8 or 9, okay? But anyway, so it's good traffic there. So I want to get you up so that people will discover you, and I'll put out an announcement about putting that interview up. And then as I get caught up, everybody has heard this. It sounds like the oldest alibi in the world, but I am behind on written reviews. I promise you I'll get caught up one of these years before they take me to the nursing home. But the review will follow a little bit later, and what that's going to do is give you a second punch of publicity and so on. And if you have, I can't quite remember, if you, for sure, Facebook is very important these days. So make sure we are friends on Facebook so we can just really splash the universe with this stuff. Many, many thanks, violinist Blanka Bednarz and pianist Matthew Bengtson. Say it so I won't keep making fun. I've got to hang up. So give me your name again, please, Matthew.
Matthew Bengtson.
Thank you. Pianist, wonderful 3 CD set if you're looking to collect the chamber music of Karol Szymanowski. This is a very good place to begin. Again, very interesting man, very interesting CD set. Covers a lot of territory. Beautiful, beautiful repertoire that the pianists and violinists and pianists should be looking at for their chamber music programs. Many thanks. I'm exhausted. I think I'm done. Are you guys done?
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. We'll see you then.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.